In one of the most unexpected twists in Gold Rush history, Brennan Ruault has made a surprising and emotional return to Parker Schnabel's crew after 5 long years apart. For fans who have followed the journey of these two miners, this news hit like a thunderclap. Brennan was once one of Parker's most trusted foremen, someone Parker leaned on heavily during the most intense seasons of their mining careers. Their partnership had delivered huge results, massive gold totals, and some of the most memorable moments on the show. But everything changed after a heated falling out that ended with Brennan walking away from Parker's operation, leaving both fans and crew stunned. After that, Brennan didn't disappear. He found a new home under Tony Beets' son, Kevin Beets. Working with the Beets family gave Brennan a new start and a fresh sense of direction. He was part of a tight crew that respected him, relied on him, and helped him grow even more as a miner. For several seasons, it seemed like Brennan had moved on for good. He had found stability, respect, and success in his new role, and fans assumed he'd remain with the Beets operation for the long haul. But Gold Rush Season 16 has changed everything. Out of nowhere, Parker Schnabel personally reached out to Brennan with an offer that no one expected. This wasn't just a professional move, it was personal. Parker didn't send an assistant or a message through someone else, he called Brennan himself. And that call set off a chain of events that would shock both the Beets camp and Parker's own crew. Brennan's decision to return wasn't taken lightly. He knew it would surprise people, especially Kevin Beets and Faith Tang, who had treated him like family. But when opportunity knocks, sometimes the timing is just right. Parker's offer wasn't simply about money, it was about something deeper. It was about growth, leadership, and a second chance at doing something great together. The moment of truth came when Brennan decided to deliver the news to Kevin and Faith in person. He didn't want to send a text or make a quick phone call. He pulled up to their claim with a smile, ready to speak face to face. It was a quiet Yukon afternoon, and as he stepped out of his truck, he greeted Kevin with a familiar laugh. Kevin, half joking, called him a stranger and asked where he had been.
Hiding all this time. It seemed like an ordinary visit between friends, but the tone quickly changed when Brennan explained why he had come. He told them he'd received a call with a job offer, one that was too good to pass up. The conversation grew still. Kevin and Faith waited for him to explain further, unsure of what he was about to say. Then came the shocker. The offer had come directly from Parker Schnabel. For a moment there was silence. Everyone knew the history between Parker and Brennan, the past arguments, the differences, and the eventual split. To hear that Parker had reached out again and that Brennan had accepted the offer left Kevin and Faith speechless. Brennan explained that the decision had not been easy, but it made sense for where he wanted to go in the future. He said it wasn't just about the paycheck, it was about being part of something bigger, taking on more responsibility, using his experience, and working with a crew he once trusted. Kevin, while clearly surprised and disappointed, respected Brennan's honesty. He understood how mining works. Good crew members come and go, but losing someone of Brennan's caliber was a big blow. He wished Brennan luck, though he couldn't help but joke that mining 2,000 ounces without Brennan would be a challenge. Faith added a light-hearted comment, saying maybe they'd have to start poaching too. The laughter couldn't hide the sadness, though. As Brennan drove away from their claim, there was a sense of finality in the air. One chapter had closed, and another was about to begin. 25 miles away, at Parker Schnabel's camp, no one had any idea that Brennan was about to make a dramatic return. The crew was deep in the grind at Sulfur Creek, battling the elements, the clock, and exhaustion. Parker's trusted foreman, Mitch Blasky, was running things solo at the site. He had been pushing hard to open up a massive 2,000-foot cut before Parker's water license expired in just 10 weeks. It was a huge task, one that required strength, precision, and long hours in tough conditions. Mitch was juggling everything himself, operating machinery, digging, managing the drainage, and fighting the clock.
Every day counted, and the workload was taking a toll. Then, out of nowhere, a familiar figure appeared on the horizon. It was Brennan Ruault. When Mitch saw him walking toward the machines with that same confident grin, he couldn't believe it. It felt like seeing an old friend after years apart. Brennan walked up, and before Mitch could even ask what was happening, Brennan said that Parker had personally poached him. He said Parker wanted the band back together. Mitch laughed in disbelief. It was a reunion he hadn't expected, but one he clearly welcomed. Brennan and Mitch had once been one of the strongest duos in Parker's crew, co-leading operations and helping Parker hit record-breaking gold totals in earlier seasons. Their chemistry was unmatched, two men who respected each other and worked seamlessly together. Mitch called it Christmas come early, and the two jumped back into their usual rhythm like no time had passed. They joked, they laughed, and they got to work. Beneath the friendly banter, though, both knew that working under Parker always came with pressure. The clock was ticking, and expectations were sky high. When Parker arrived at the Sulfur Creek site to check on the progress, the tension quickly returned. The terrain was extremely difficult, and Parker's frustration was clear. He wanted to find virgin ground, untouched pay dirt that could produce gold. But it wasn't easy to tell where the good ground was. The site had been mined decades earlier by old dredge operations, leaving behind deep tailings and high banks that buried any untouched gold-rich sections. Parker explained that the trick was to find those hidden areas that the old-timers missed. The history of Sulfur Creek added even more weight to the moment. 75 years earlier, miners had pulled out what would today be worth over $1 billion in gold from that same area. Their methods were rough and incomplete, leaving behind untapped ground that could still hold great potential. For Parker, this wasn't just about finding gold. It was about outsmarting the miners who came before and proving that his modern operation could succeed where others had stopped. But as the days went on, tension started to build between Parker and his foreman. Mitch, dealing with flooding and water issues at the site, decided to take a different approach than Parker's original plan.
Instead of immediately panning for gold and focusing on pay zones, he focused on fixing the drainage problem first. He believed that without proper drainage, mining would be nearly impossible. So he dug a massive 2,000-foot ditch to dry out the ground and make it workable. Brennan, newly back on the crew, backed up Mitch's decision completely. The plan worked. The water began to drain, exposing dry ground that could finally be mined safely. But when Parker returned to inspect the site, he wasn't happy. From his point of view, too much time had been spent on preparation and not enough on finding gold. His frustration boiled over as he told the crew that they needed to locate virgin ground immediately or risk abandoning the site. For Brennan, the situation felt familiar, almost too familiar. It brought back memories of the same kind of tension that had once driven him to leave Parker's team years ago. Parker's perfectionist attitude, his need for control, and his impatience often clashed with the crew's practical methods. It was like déjà vu. Brennan had been here before, and he knew how quickly things could go downhill if communication broke down. Despite that, he also noticed something different this time. Parker had matured. The young, fiery miner who once clashed with everyone had grown into a more calculated leader. Brennan, too, had changed. After working with Kevin and Tony Beets, he had learned patience, strategy, and different ways of tackling problems. The tension was still there, but there was also a layer of respect that hadn't existed before. Both men seemed to understand that they were stronger together than apart. As the days passed at Sulfur Creek, Brennan settled back into the rhythm of Parker's crew. It felt strange at first, standing once again beside the same people he had worked with years ago. Some faces were new, but the energy was the same, fast-paced, intense, and focused. Everyone had one thing on their minds: gold. The return of Brennan brought new life to the team. Mitch was relieved to have someone who could take the pressure off his shoulders. The two men worked side by side just like the old days, running equipment, organizing the crew, and planning each cut with precision. They didn't need to talk much to understand each other. Years of working together had built an unspoken connection. When one started a task, the other already knew what to do next. That kind of teamwork is rare in mining, and Parker knew it. Even though Parker's leadership style could still be demanding, there was a sense of trust beginning to rebuild. He respected Brennan's experience, and Brennan in turn respected Parker's vision. The challenge at Sulfur Creek was no small task. The ground was unpredictable, the weather rough, and the clock unforgiving. But Brennan didn't shy away from hard work. He had learned from the Beets family that every obstacle is just another problem waiting to be solved. Parker had set an almost impossible goal for season 16, 10,000 ounces of gold. It was a number that made even seasoned miners raise their eyebrows.
But Parker was not one to aim small. Over the years, he had built his reputation on ambition. From his early teenage seasons, where he inherited his grandfather's claim, to now running one of the biggest operations in the Yukon, Parker's drive had only grown. The pressure was enormous. To reach that number, Parker had expanded his operations across multiple sites: Dominion Creek, Mud Mountain, and now Sulfur Creek. Managing so many locations at once meant more machinery, more manpower, and more potential for problems. Parker couldn't be everywhere at once, and that's where strong leadership on the ground became essential. Bringing Brennan back was part of that plan. Parker knew that to hit 10,000 ounces, he needed people he could rely on completely. For Brennan, this was his chance to prove not just to Parker, but to himself that he had grown. His years under the Beets family had changed the way he worked. Tony Beets was known for his old-school, hard-as-nails approach to mining, while Kevin had his own way of balancing innovation and efficiency. Brennan had absorbed everything. Now he was bringing that knowledge back to Parker's team, blending what he had learned with what he already knew. His impact was felt immediately. Brennan noticed problems before they grew, spotted mechanical issues early, and guided the crew with calm authority. He didn't rush into things, he planned. He encouraged the younger workers, explained why things needed to be done a certain way, and helped them understand the bigger picture. The crew appreciated his leadership, and Parker noticed the difference. Still, no mining operation runs without tension. The Yukon doesn't forgive mistakes. The terrain shifts, machinery breaks down, and weather can turn in minutes. As the season went on, new problems emerged at Sulfur Creek. Flooding was under control, but finding pay dirt was harder than expected. The team dug deep, tested samples, and moved tons of overburden, but Parker's frustration began to grow again. When Parker visited the site, his expectations were sky high. He wanted to see gold, not just progress. He looked over the cuts, questioned the plans, and pushed the crew to move faster. It was a familiar sight, Parker pacing around, calculating every move and demanding more results. But this time, Brennan didn't lose his cool. Instead of arguing, he listened, took Parker's points, and calmly explained their reasoning. He told him that rushing the process could mean missing the best ground. Mitch backed him up, adding that solid planning would pay off in the long run. Parker, though visibly tense, respected that they had a plan. It wasn't easy for him to step back, but he did. That small moment showed how much both men had changed. The old Parker might have stormed off in frustration, and the old Brennan might have pushed back. But now there was a mutual understanding. Both wanted the same thing: gold and success. As the days turned into weeks, progress began to show. The site dried up completely, and the crew started hitting better ground. The wash plant roared back to life, and gold started to flow through the sluices. Each cleanup gave the team a boost of motivation. The excitement was back, and so was the rhythm. Parker visited again, and this time there was a smile on his face. He congratulated the crew for turning things around, and acknowledged that the drainage plan had worked after all.
It wasn't something Parker did often, but his praise meant a lot to everyone there, especially Brennan and Mitch. For Brennan, it was more than just finding gold. It was about rebuilding a bridge that had once been broken. He had left Parker's crew years ago under tough circumstances, but now he was back, not as an employee, but as a leader, someone Parker could truly depend on. The air between them was still full of that old intensity, but it was now mixed with respect and understanding. Meanwhile, fans watching from home were thrilled. Social media lit up with reactions to Brennan's reunion. People who had followed Gold Rush for years couldn't believe the reunion was actually happening. Many had hoped for it, but never thought they'd see it. Parker and Brennan working together again was something that felt right, like unfinished business finally getting its chance to be completed. But behind the excitement, the challenges kept coming. Parker's 10,000-ounce target loomed like a mountain. Every hour of downtime meant losing precious gold. Parker expanded his focus beyond Sulfur Creek, splitting his time between multiple sites. That left Mitch and Brennan with even more responsibility. They had to make key decisions without Parker standing over their shoulders. This new trust tested their leadership, but it also gave them freedom. Brennan, with his steady hand, guided the crew through breakdowns, weather delays, and tough calls about where to dig next.
Didn't panic, he fixed them. When morale dropped, he cracked a joke or reminded the team that every shovel of dirt could be the one that makes the season. His calm presence became the backbone of the operation. It wasn't just about experience. It was about chemistry. The friendship between Mitch and Brennan made a huge difference. They balanced each other out perfectly. Mitch was technical, always focused on machines and logistics, while Brennan was strategic, reading the ground and the crew. Together, they made the operation run smoothly. Parker could trust them to get the job done, even when he wasn't there. At the same time, Brennan couldn't ignore the pressure building around him. Working under Parker again brought back the old feelings, the drive, the competition, and the never-ending push for perfection. Parker was still Parker. He wanted everything done fast, right, and better than anyone else. Brennan understood it now. He realized that Parker's demanding nature wasn't just stubbornness, it was passion. Parker didn't settle for average because he wanted greatness, and Brennan respected that. Still, there were moments of tension. One day, when a major piece of equipment broke down, Parker's frustration came roaring back. The repair cost time, and time meant lost gold. Parker snapped at the crew, demanding faster results. Brennan stayed calm, took charge of the repairs, and got the machine running again. Later, Parker cooled down and admitted that Brennan had handled it perfectly. He appreciated his patience, something Parker himself was still learning. As the season continued, the partnership between Parker and Brennan grew stronger. There was mutual trust forming again. Parker saw that Brennan wasn't just another worker, he was a leader who made everyone around him better. Brennan, too, realized that Parker had matured into a more balanced leader who could admit when someone else's way worked better. At night, after long shifts, the crew would gather around, share stories, and laugh about the old days. Brennan often talked about how much he'd learned since leaving Parker's team. He said working under Tony and Kevin Beets had taught him different perspectives about efficiency, patience, and respect for the land. Process. Now he could combine those lessons with the aggressive drive he'd learned from Parker. The result was a stronger miner, one who could handle both pressure and leadership with ease. The difference was clear in the gold room. Each cleanup started to look better than the last. They were moving serious dirt, and the numbers were finally adding up. The hard work was paying off. Brennan's decision to return was starting to look like a master move, not just for him, but for Parker's entire operation. As summer rolled deeper into the mining season, the days grew longer, but the work never seemed to end. The Yukon sun might stretch across the sky, but for Parker's crew, there was no such thing as enough daylight. Every extra hour meant more dirt through the plant, more gold in the sluices, and a step closer to Parker's massive 10,000-ounce goal. Brennan's presence had brought stability to Sulfur Creek. The team moved with precision now, and even when setbacks came, they handled them with calm efficiency. It was like watching a well-rehearsed machine, each person knowing their role, each part of the operation connected to the other. Mitch and Brennan ran the crew with quiet confidence, and Parker could see the results in every cleanup. Still, the Yukon never lets anyone relax for long. The weather started to turn, with heavy rains hitting unexpectedly. The soft ground made hauling pay dirt harder. Trucks got bogged down in mud, pumps had to run constantly, and keeping the wash plant fed became a challenge. Brennan, who had seen similar problems while working with the Beets crew, was ready for it. He'd learned how to read the land, to predict which areas would hold up and which would flood. Using that experience, he guided the crew to higher ground, planned new drainage trenches, and even adjusted the cut layout to keep production steady. Parker appreciated the initiative. He didn't have to give orders for every small detail anymore. Brennan took responsibility, and things kept moving. But challenges don't just come from the ground. They come from people, too. Managing a crew of miners, each with their own temper and pride, can be just as hard as digging through permafrost. Some of the newer workers weren't used to Brennan's calm but firm style. They missed Parker's intense, direct approach. To them, Brennan seemed too quiet, too easygoing. It took time for them to realize that his calm wasn't weakness, it was control. When one of the younger operators pushed too hard and damaged a piece of equipment, Brennan didn't yell. He pulled the man aside, explained what went wrong, and showed him how to fix it. The next day, that same operator came back more focused and respectful. Brennan earned loyalty not through fear, but through understanding. Slowly, even the skeptics began to see why Parker trusted him. Meanwhile, Parker was splitting his time between different sites: Dominion Creek, Mud Mountain, and Sulfur Creek. Each one demanded attention, each had its own problems. Dominion was running into tough overburden, Mud Mountain was struggling with equipment wear, and Sulfur Creek, though steady, still needed to hit higher gold grades. Parker moved between them like a man on a mission, never satisfied, always pushing for more. Whenever he arrived at Sulfur Creek, the energy shifted. The crew straightened up, the pace quickened, and the focus sharpened. Parker's presence carried weight. He didn't say much at first, he just observed. He'd walk along the cut, look at the dirt, glance at the sluice box, and check the tailings. Then he'd call Mitch and Brennan over for a talk. Sometimes he praised them, other times he pointed out what he thought could be better. On one of those visits, Parker noticed that the pay dirt wasn't as rich as expected. The cleanup numbers were solid, but not amazing. He wanted to dig deeper into the ground, but Brennan cautioned against it. He explained that the deeper layers were too wet and unstable, and that going lower could risk flooding the site again. Parker listened, but didn't look convinced. The tension in the air grew. It was one of those moments where their different styles clashed. Parker was all about pushing limits, while Brennan preferred calculated moves. Mitch stepped in, suggesting they do a few test holes first. It was a compromise, a way to check if Brennan's caution or Parker's instinct would pay off. The tests showed that Brennan was right. The deeper ground was too wet. Parker didn't like being wrong, but he respected the result. He admitted that the call to hold off had saved them time and trouble. Moments like that built trust, piece by piece.
Might not have said it out loud, but he was starting to see Brennan not just as a foreman, but as a partner, someone who could balance his intensity with reason. Back at Kevin Beets' claim, the season was quieter without Brennan. Kevin had a good team, but Brennan's absence was noticeable. He had been one of the key operators, someone who knew how to keep things running smoothly even when pressure was high. Losing him wasn't easy, but the Beets family understood that miners sometimes move where opportunity calls. In the mining world, loyalty is respected, but progress is necessary. Word spread quickly through the Gold Rush community about Brennan's move. Other miners, fans, and even crew members from different claims talked about it. Some saw it as a bold career move, going back to Parker after all these years. Others wondered if old tensions would resurface. But as the episodes aired, it became clear that things were different now. The partnership worked. Parker had matured as a leader, Brennan had grown as a miner, and together, they were achieving results that surprised even their toughest critics. Every cleanup seemed to bring them closer to that massive 10,000